Tony Norton and Jadine Klomparens. Mentioned here with Jadine picking up her only loss in round 2, currently on a 7-match win streak to end yesterday. And we will start out. Tony on Hallowed Fountain tapped. And for Jadine, she'll fire off a Thoughtseize. We'll get our first look over at the control player's holdings. Looks like he has lands number 2, 3, and 4, and then a curve of reactive spells. Mana Leak, Electrolyze, and Cryptic Command.
All of these cards quite a bit better on the play than the draw. This hand is really just a mix of lands and spells, which is all you're really looking for with a deck like Jeskai Control. You're not trying to execute a proactive plan, and all these cards are fine.
It looks like Jadine's going to take the Mana Leak, would allow her to sneak in a turn 2 play if she has something like Tarmogoyf or Dark Confidant.
Yeah, something like Fetch Land into Tarmogoyf would be really powerful here. You want to have the land in case Tony can top deck a Lightning Bolt, currently just instant sorcery in the graveyard.
And Jadine plays the second land and actually just passes. So we go back over to Tony. Looking at Jadine's threats today. 4 Dark Confidant, 4 Tarmogoyf, 2 Scavenging Ooze, 2 Goblin Rabblemaster, 1 Grim Lobomancer, and that's about it. One thing I'm noticing here, they're very answerable by Electrolyze.
Yeah, with the take being Mana Leak, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see Liliana of the Veil on 3, certainly given no turn 2 action.
Sure. Yeah, and that one does get out of range of Electrolyze.
Yeah, if it was Rabblemaster, you got to figure that the Electrolyze is a lot worse for Jadine than the Mana Leak is.
Sure. You know, in this matchup, I'm thinking about cards like Goblin Rabblemaster. They're not overly impressive. And you look at Liliana of the Veil, that was Jadine's turn 3 play. Check to see whether or not Tony has drawn another counterspell. The answer is no. So Liliana, she'll go up to 4. Jadine discards an Abrupt Decay. Tony, a Sacred Foundry.
And Jadine's deck is quite a bit more lean in the mana department. So if she's able to leverage Liliana for a couple of turns, that's generally going to be a lot harder for Tony. Jadine is more happy to discard excess land, so he's going to want to try to deal with this for as quickly as possible.
Yeah, well, it looks like he may try to burn down the Liliana. So on end step, he goes ahead and shocks for Steam Vents and uses that Electrolyze just to knock the Liliana from 4 loyalty down to 2. If he can get another Electrolyze, he can finish off the Planeswalker.
And I think he has a Lightning Helix in hand, which is certainly acceptable. You'd have to take shields down to something like Cryptic Command, and if he has a card he's not in love with in his hand, you might just leave Cryptic up, even let Liliana activate this turn, Helix it at the end step.
Right, because even at 3, it's still going to be within range.
And if you feel like your discard just matters less than Jadine's, that's just going to be advantage for the Jeskai player.
We'll see Jadine pluses the Liliana. She'll discard a Swamp. A Steam Vents will be discarded by Tony. And no 4th land, no threat. Jadine says go. And here's the play you mentioned. Tony on end step gets to Lightning Helix the Liliana, goes back up, gains 3, fetches down to 19, sets up his land, and I really do like how he played that turn.
Yeah, definitely. Leaving up the Cryptic there, and Jadine knew about it. She couldn't realistically commit into it, and Tony now just really firmly in the driver's seat.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jadine's going to have to draw a discard spell, and actually not just a discard spell, Thoughtseize or Collective Brutality to get that Cryptic out of Tony's hand. And even then, eventually he can work his way towards something like Snapcaster Mage.
And he can even just counter draw the discard spell and then hopefully have something for the follow-up threat. And
players, Tony playing tap lands, Jadine just shipping back. This is exactly where Tony wants to be.
Tony has found a Celestial Colonnade, 1 mana off of activating that. You got to figure that there's some number of Terminate in Jadine's hand at this point.
Yeah, no, Jadine has drawn another threat. It's a copy of Tarmogoyf. What I'm interested in is whether or not she wants to commit that into the known Cryptic. And you see Inquisition of Kozilek from Jadine. She may want to wait, I think, till she has 2 threats. She casts Inquisition. In response, Tony Sphinx's Revelations for 2 now shows the hand. The only card that she could take is Electrolyze. The hand is a Colonnade, a Supreme Verdict, and that Cryptic Command.
Yeah, so it looks like the verdict, or the Sphinx Revelation at the time it was cast was the only take with the Inquisition. Drew Electrolyze, but even still, he has Supreme Verdict. This Goyf is covered. A little bit clunky on mana, though. He won't be able to cast Verdict and leave up Cryptic Command. He has a lot of life to play with, so we'll have some options here. But this Tarmogoyf figures to be pretty large. We have that Liliana for a Planeswalker, land, instant sorcery. No creature as of yet, so a 4/5.
It was a bit of a risk play to make that Sphinx's Revelation. I suppose Tony could have just let Jadine take the Revelation, and then Cryptic Command would have been up. Though he's -1 card to make that play. And now Jadine will go to work with the Tarmogoyf. We'll get a check on it. Looks like they have it at 4/5 as Tony goes down to 17. Instant sorcery, Planeswalker land. No creatures just yet.
Yeah, and the way it plays out, if the Revelation's gone and you don't draw anything that could be Inquisition, you're technically up a card, but things didn't work out that way. Just the spell it drew was discarded immediately.
Yeah, goes to work again. Who does Tarmogoyf? Tony down to 13. Tarmogoyf as a 4/5 is out of range of those colonnades on as a potential block, and Jadine makes another threat in that Raging Ravine. And right now, Tony does not have answers to Ravine.
Yeah, Animate Colonnade and Block is online currently, assuming that you're able to do that.
Yeah.
The mana intensity of activating and attacking with Raging Ravine for now means that should be good. But Jadine can just continue attacking with the Tarmogoyf until she has a reason to change.
Right, you'd assume Jadine has a Terminate effect in her hand, but you're right, you can't really activate Raging Ravine and Terminate, not until she has 2 more lands in play.
Right.
And Tony works his way up to 8 mana. Now you see him cast that Supreme Verdict. I like the patience. He took 8 damage off the Tarmogoyf just so that he could hold up this Cryptic Command.
Yep. This is a window where you might see an attack with the Ravine. There's no mana up for the activation on the Colonnade. Cryptic Command can bounce it.
Yeah, now if Tony uses the Cryptic just to bounce the Ravine, I would think that's
kind of a win.
That's
for
a win, yeah.
Yeah. So depending on the context of the spells in her hands, this is a tough turn. You got to plan this out a couple turns going forward. Maybe you can get in a chip shot with the Ravine, but going forward, that plan's a lot worse. If it's actually a problem, Tony's just going to use the Cryptic Command and you won't be able to get anywhere. It's unlikely you're going to end up with a 5/5 Ravine by attacking this turn.
If you're looking at ways to get ahead, there is just the one Sphinx's Revelation in Tony's deck. Certainly if he could draw another one, that would be huge here.
Yeah, well, 4 Snapcaster Mage is kind of like more Revelations.
And the test spell comes down for Jadine. She tries for the Liana. That gets hit by the Cryptic. Then she makes Dark Confidant, hoping that it will survive. Tony will opt, keeps it on top, and draws. I don't think Dark Confidant's sticking around.
Yeah, sometimes it's just more cantrips.
Sometimes you just opted do another opt to the top.
Yep.
Looks like that was what happened. 3 cards in hand. Did Tony find a way to remove the Dark Confidant?
That sequencing by Jace was by Jadine there was really nice. The Dark Confidant, unlikely to eat the Cryptic Command just because there's so many potential answers to it. And then if there's no removal spell, that's going to generate a lot of value.
And here's another win condition from Tony. It's Ajani Vengeant, the Planeswalker from Shards of Alara, -2 to deal 3 to the Dark Confidant. Puts Tony up to 15. It does open a window where Jadine can attack down the Planeswalker.
Yeah. Wouldn't be surprised to see a Raging Ravine attack here. Maybe you'll see something. If she has Goblin Rabble Master, this would be a really great window for that. Get that Goblin token in at the Ajani here.
What I do think is interesting is if this Ajani Vengeant hits the graveyard, you're looking at the big win conditions for Tony, the cards that actually win by themselves. Cards like Sphinx's Revelation and Ajani Vengeant, all those will be out of his deck. So his win condition...
You're overstating this. He has such a Colonnades in his deck. It's really easy for Jeskai to close games.
No, what I mean is like that will be his only win condition at that point.
It's not hard.
I know, I like it. I like it. Sometimes you'll see a Jeskai control player play something like Nahiri or some like true finisher. I guess he still has one Torrential Gearhulk, but otherwise you're right, it's lands, it's burying them in cards.
I can't tell you how many times I've covered so many spells with Grixis and just lost very handily to Celestial Colonnade. It's just very good.
Jadine's going to try for Rabble Master, but Tony has another Cryptic Command at the ready. It's a counter and a draw, but once again, she has a second threat. It's Tarmogoyf. Can Tony answer both?
Yeah, she's been very patient finding windows where she can deploy 2 threats on the same turn.
Tarmogoyf will get hit by a Path to Exile. And actually, I'm okay if I'm on Jadine's side of seeing that Tarmogoyf get hit by Path. I think the prize here is Raging Ravine, and that Tony just got rid of one of his answers to the creature land.
Yep. Yeah, both of those threats outside Celestial Colonnade. There's a little more upkeep involved with attacking with Raging Ravine. She has to commit 4 mana in addition to attacking with that land every turn when she wants to get aggressive with that, whereas a Tarmogoyf could just turn sideways. Stuff like Supreme Verdict, of course, there's only 1 in the list here, but Snapcaster Mage Supreme Verdict can't answer the Raging Ravine, so it does require some more specific answers, even if it is more mana intensive.
Here's Raging Ravine. It's going to tick up to a 5-5. Now we'll put Tony to the first test of whether or not he has an answer. The way he used that path to exile, I would... Well, I guess he doesn't have another one just yet. He takes 5 here, actually. And then end steps Snapcasters on that Sphinx's Revelation for 3. If he's not Snapcasting a path to exile here and willing to take that damage, that's a real sign of strength.
Well, it's either a sign of strength or he's just taking a risk. Saying, if these 3 cards are bad, I guess I'm going to lose this game.
Okay.
But drawing 3 cards is really nice.
And now we see the 1 utility land in Tony's list show up. This is a copy of Desolate Lighthouse. We'll see this one from time to time in a Jeskai control deck. This one really was a mainstay in Splinter Twin decks. But Celestial Colonnade and Snapcaster Mage will hit back for 6. I guess another plan is Tony can just race from this position.
Yep. He's got plenty of burn spells in his deck. Celestial Colonnade hits for 4. Snapcaster Mage in the battlefield here is another 2 every turn.
Yeah, right now Tony at 13. It's Jadine that's 11. She's behind. The Raging Ravine each turn does add up nicely. This attack is for 6. The next attack is for 7. Tony's at 13. Now I'd expect him to have an answer, and he does.
Another path to exile, and that's probably going to wrap this one up.
Jadine not searching off the path either. You see her basic land count. 1 forest, 1 swamp. The forest's in play, suggesting that there's the swamp in her hand.
Mm-hmm.
Snapcaster swings again, this time without Colonnade, to put Jadine to 9.
Yeah, Tony is sitting on a bunch of mana. Perhaps has something like Torrential Gearhulk plus Cryptic Command. There is the 1 Gearhulk in the deck. Could also be Snapcaster Cryptic plus another Cryptic.
Yeah, I mean, in Desolate Lighthouse means even if he just has extra mana up, he can convert.
Right.
Jadine tries for another Tarmogoyf, but we've reached that point of the game where Jund really doesn't compete.
Mm-hmm.
Path to Exile takes care of the Tarmogoyf. Every land that Tony draws can be converted into a spell here with Desolate Lighthouse. Because the Sphinx's Revelation has both been cast and flashed back, I don't know how much more he's going to want land number 12. You see Desolate Lighthouse does discard a Scalding Tarn. 2 more points in. Lightning Bolt will shoot down the Snapcaster. You see Jadine down to 1 card here.
Particularly with fetch lands, Tony probably running light on fetchables at this point.
Yeah, and it's really just a matter of time till Tony finds a Snapcaster Mage or a Torrential Gearhulk. I suppose, as you mentioned, he doesn't even really need those. He can start hitting with Colonnades at some point.
Yep. Only takes 2 Colonnade hits from here. But it's totally safe just to keep activating the Lighthouse. If you have 1 or 2 answers in your hand, you'll be able to cover whatever Jadine's doing.
She's going to try a Raging Ravine again. This one pumps up to 4. Her hope is to catch Tony just without, with the wrong mix of answers, just in this small window. But he has Lightning Helix for the creature land. End step, Snapcaster Mage. We'll see what he wants to snap.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Helix go upstairs here.
No, he is a control player through and through. It is, instead of Helix, it's Cryptic Command, bouncing Jadine's land and drawing a card.
Well, it's the only black mana she had up, so there couldn't be a Fatal Push or a Terminate on this turn. So it's time for some Colonnade attacks, I suppose.
As someone, when I play my control decks, I play them like Tony does here. You're right. We could Snapcaster Helix, but no. We're going to draw a card.
That's not safe enough.
That's not safe enough. In fact, I think it's a little aggressive to cast the Snapcaster at all, that Cryptic's going to counter the next spell. We can just wait till Jadine plays something. He'll pit Jadine down to 2. Inquisition of Kozilek. I like the play from Jadine. She wants extra information, and Tony recognizes it. He negates the Inquisition.
The 1 main deck negate, I suppose, is some extra information.
Yep, then shows a Lightning Bolt. So, game 1 goes to Jeskai Control. Jadine puts some threat on the board. At some point, Raging Ravine looks like Tony may not be able to answer it, but he pulls through, and he is up a game 1-0. And we will move over to the sideboards.
For Tony Norton going on the line here, we have 2 Relic of Progenitus, 2 Ceremonious Rejection, a Keranos God of Storms, a Jace Architect of Thought, a Vendelian Click, an Engineered Explosives, a Dispel, a Disdainful Stroke, a Counterflux, a Celestial Purge, a Wear Tear, a Stony Silence, and an Izzet Staticaster. So approaching this matchup, your 2 biggest concern are Liliana the Veil and Tarmogoyf. Celestial Purge can answer Liliana. It might be good enough for that reason. He's seen Dark Confidant. This one's pretty reasonable. Raging Ravine also turns into a red creature, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's red and green.
Yep, so it does cover a good mix of things. He's pretty likely to reach for some of these bigger finishers as well. Keranos, God of Storms, Jace Architect of Thought, just because these are big value plays. Against these discard decks, you can really pull yourself out of some situations with those. And Engineered Explosives covers Tarmogoyf and Liliana as well.
Interesting question for you. He has 2 copies of Relic of Progenitus. That card can be used to shrink down Tarmogoyf. At the same time, it can hurt his own Snapcaster Mage. Where's the risk-reward on that?
Yeah, kind of the issue is that you have to check your own graveyard, and if you're only concerned about Tarmogoyf, it doesn't take very long for it to build back up. I think Relic is pretty poor against just Tarmogoyf, certainly out of a control deck. Something like Merfolk might bring in this against Tarmogoyf.
Okay, that makes sense. So when you're playing the Jeskai control, this is for Dredge. This is for somebody who's really not playing fair with the graveyard.
Yeah, you might bring in a Snapcaster Mirror. That could be the line.
Sure. On Jadine's side, her sideboard is 3 Fulminator Mage, 2 Nihil Spellbomb, 2 Liliana the Last Hope. She has 4 of the Veil in the main, so these would be Liliana's 5 and 6. 2 Collective Brutalities, the 2nd and 3rd. She has the 4th Thoughtseize in the board. An Engineer Explosives, a Graph Digger's Cage, a Kitchen Finks, a Huntmaster of the Fells, and then a 2nd Maelstrom Pulse. It's a really Jund thing here where most of her sideboard are just additional copies of her main deck cards.
There's a lot of that, though. There are some upgrades here. Fulminator Mage is really powerful in this kind of matchup. If you can start taxing the lands. The Jeskai control deck, as you saw there, Tony had 12 lands, was pretty happy to have all of them. Destroying Celestial Colonnade, also a big win, so Jadine can really push some advantage with the Fulminator Mage. Reasonable argument for Liliana the Last Hope if you can just -2 that a couple times. That's a ton of value in a matchup like this. More Thoughtseize to clear the way makes enough sense.
All right, so they're going to get ready for a second game. For those of you watching us over on Twitch TV or on StarCityGames.com, we'd like to tell you about our Twitch subscription program. We always appreciate having you here as a viewership and would love to have you as a subscriber. Now, with a subscription comes custom emoticons and badges, and for our Day 2 coverage here, you get to help us decide the quarterfinals on what players and what decks to watch. You can get that if you subscribe today, anytime really between now and the top 8. You can subscribe to us over on our Twitch channel if you're watching us on Star City at twitch.tv/SCGCHAR.
Always some sweet ones in the modern top 8s, and I know everybody watching tends to have their favorite decks, so influence what you want to see.
I really like how Modern is following in Legacy's footsteps that way, where it's not just about like the best deck. You start playing the deck long enough, and you get this emotional attachment to it, where I'll play an F&M, right, and there's that guy, and I'm sure everybody who's listening knows this, has that guy at their store where he plays Merfolk, and he loves Merfolk. And, it doesn't matter if it's really good or bad, but, if Merfolk's in top 8, he's voting for a Merfolk deck.
Yep. Plenty of people like that.
I'm like that with Primeval Titan. If Primeval
really?
Titan's in the top, yeah.
I didn't even know you liked that card.
Yeah, he can go in a couple different decks, and I like all of them.
I am wildly indifferent to the decks when I'm not personally playing them. In fact, I judge very harshly other people's Delver decks.
I've had to I now have acquired multiple sets of Primeval Titans just so I can have all the different Titan decks built at the same time.
How many sets do you need?
Well, I have 3 sets. I have the foil set, the regular set for Valakut, and then the 3rd set, which goes in whatever experimental decks I'm trying. Like, Mono Green Devotion or something like that.
Is Titan even? I guess it's fine. You can find some Nykthos.
It's it's pretty good.
It's not actually the payoff in that deck. It's like
it's just another or like Tooth and if I like Tooth and Nail, Tooth and Nail maybe should have some Titans.
Sure.
I know that getting Emrakul Xenagos kills someone off Tooth and Nail, but if you get like Kiki Jiki Primeval Titan, you probably kill them too.
Well, you gotta bridge the gap between 6 and 9,
It's a really nice spell, right? Titan's on 6, and he brings you to the Tooth and Nail with Entwine next turn. That's great. He can find the Boseiju on his turn, so you get the uncounterable Tooth with Entwine on the following turn. It's just easy.
I have lost to more than one Boseiju. I don't like that card in formats where I can't play Wasteland. I've had someone play Boseiju, like the Goryo's Vengeance deck, just lead on that in Modern, and I just felt so demoralized.
See, when I play against those dumb blue decks, first we cavern out the Titan, then the Titan gets the Boseiju, then we cast the spells off the Boseiju.
Wastelanding Cavern of Souls is just one of the greatest feelings in the world.
I don't like it when people counter my spells.
Do you like it when people destroy their lands?
No,
It's a basically free game action.
Look, if Wasteland was, I tried when Amulet of Vigor got really good. I started talking with some players like, should I build Amulet in Legacy? And I've like, this is like, Wasteland's a card.
Do you want to
And
get your Gruul Turf Wastelanded?
It's like, oh wow, Wasteland just makes this deck totally unplayable.
It's a little worse.
Yeah.
We saw something like that going on. We saw yesterday Eldrazi Tron turn 3 Carning bounce lands.
Oh, that's horrible. You just lose.
That was really good. And imagine doing that for 0 mana just for free.
There was this actually interesting interaction where Amulet, even with Amulet Bloom, had trouble beating Living End because they were just like, make some Fulminator Mages, hit your bounce lands, and then they'd Living End the Fulminator Mages back. You're like, this is so bad.
Well,
I spent so many turns making these small number of lands.
Can't beat Grey Ogre, I guess. Guess you got it.
Just anything that blowing up bounce lands is really a problem. Jadine on a pair of mulligans here for the second game.
Not like this.
Well, no, one of the things I like about Jund typically is that they mulligan pretty well, right? If she hits a hand of, say, Thoughtseize Dark Confidant, and Tony only has 1 Lightning Bolt, 1 Lightning Helix, this could be fine, right?
Yeah, if you're plussing Liliana and you don't have cards and your opponent does, it's just card advantage every turn.
Okay, I mean, I know that sounds silly, but it's actually true.
Yeah.
Like,
where's the lie?
yeah. I mean, she would really need a card like Liliana, I think, or Dark Confidant to bridge this Mull-to-5.
Those are going to be very important. Or you're kind of hoping that for some reason Tony kept an untenable hand and just misses. That one's a little bit more ambitious. But yeah, you're drawing specifically to your card advantage engines. There are a number of games where you can just sneak in with an early Tarmogoyf. Thoughtseize Tarmogoyf can beat Jeskai pretty effectively.
Yeah, on 5 here, Jadine on the play, down a game. It's going to be a tough one. All right, keeping. Scry. It's to the top. So, game 2 underway. No Thoughtseize here. Starts with Verdant Catacombs and a Colonnade on the side of Tony Norton. Those are what, the buy-a-box Colonnades? You see with that Wooburg on the...
The old buy-a-box promo.
Inquisition of Kozilek is going to show what's up on Tony's side. He has 3 more lands. He has a pair of removal spells in Electrolyze and Path to Exile. He has Cryptic Command and Serum Visions.
Yeah, so this is a hand that's pretty resilient to discard. Sometimes you go for Serum Visions if your opponent's land light, though plenty of lands lined up here. Hard removal spell in Path to Exile. Electrolyze pretty good against a number of Jadine threats as well.
Yeah, now there is a opening here for Liliana of the Veil, right?
Yep, and she knows that the coast is clear there. And Tony can't really Serum Visions to answer to that. So if he casts Serum Visions, this is not a Spell Pierce matchup, and that's not a Spell Pierce deck. Know that's going to be good.
I was going to say, it's Negate and Mana Leak he uses to take care of Liliana.
Yep.
So he'll cast the Serum Visions. I guess post-board he can find something like Celestial Purge that just cleans it up very nicely.
Yep, that is certainly true.
But then just plays tapped Steam Vents. Not even going to... Either like recognizing, not even going to pretend he has Spell Pierce. He knows Jadine wouldn't respect it anyway.
Yep. Yeah, sometimes you just play untapped duels and matchups where your life total doesn't matter, but Jund can punish you for that.
Against my Primeval Titan decks, people just play their lands untapped.
Yep. Do that every time against Lantern Control.
So I did that against Tron, and then they hit me with an Ulamog, and then Ugin +3 to now is at exactly 13, and boy did I feel dumb.
Taught you a lesson.
It's like, wow, maybe I didn't need to shock all those for bluffs. You're Tron. It's not like I'm not sure what a bluff. Like you're not going to play around my bluffs anyway.
Yeah, they never play around it, but you gotta show him who's boss.
Yeah.
And Jadine
he was
does
the boss
have
then.
the turn 3 Liliana, cracking a fetch land here.
And I like that she's got all 3 colors. Finding that Blood Crypt has the Liliana. You mentioned this is an important card on the mulligan, and we'll see how far it can take her.
Yeah, and this is Liliana of the Veil, so this will do some work on Tony's hand.
Only 1 card left in Jadine's hand. It's pretty reasonable that next turn she could play a land, play the card in her hand, plus the Liliana on an empty hand, and when that happens, she's gaining those cards back.
Yep.
Draws for turn. 3 mana. Liliana the Last Hope. And as of recently, you can have both of these.
Yeah. pretty nice 1-2 punch.
And Tony there, last turn, okay, no, last turn was his turn 3. Jadine's going to then play the Overgrown Tomb plus the other Liliana. This is a really good setup for Jadine.
Yeah, and Tony only has access to 3 mana. He can't do too much with that kind of mana available. He can cast 1 burn spell here potentially and start going to work on these Lilianas. But with the Last Hope, it's really hard for Tony to leverage a Snapcaster Mage here. He has to deal a lot of direct damage to the Planeswalkers.
Now, does he have cards that can clean up? What are his ways to clean up Planeswalkers?
So he has that sideboard Engineered Explosives, and that would just be a clean answer to both Lilianas.
Yeah, that would be great.
Celestial Purge, quite good. Other than that, he's kind of looking at attacking them, which is not as easy. Snapcaster Mage with Dillion Click, they can get 1 hit in, and they're just going to die Liliana the Last Hope unless Tony can get that one off the board cleanly.
Yeah, Purge Snapcaster Mage, you're right, that would be good, but this isn't easy for him to deal with. He really needed to mana leak or negate some of these on the way down. Snapcaster Mage does appear to be in Tony's hand. He'll see what he has with it. Just plays a 4th land and says go. That 4th land was the Desolate Lighthouse. And despite the mulligan to 5, there's a lot of fight in this draw from Jadine.
Definitely.
See, I like this. She pluses Last Hope. There was a bit of an argument of whether or not she'd want to minus it. She pluses Liliana the Veil, but with the card still in her hand here.
Wouldn't be surprised if it was a removal spell.
I was going to say another Liliana.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what would she not play? Those two are about it.
This is cool sequencing. So Tony discarded Lightning Helix to the first Liliana.
Oh, this is so good.
And Snapcasted it back here. So he'll be able to attack down the Liliana the Last Hope.
So Last Hope took 3 off the Helix and takes the remaining 2 off the Snapcaster.
Now the Veil's at 6. You might want to do something about that.
He will. Cryptic Command will bounce, draw. And he plays land 5 tapped. So here's a tricky spot for Jadine. Yes, she can play Liliana, -2, kill Snapcaster, but if Tony has an untapped land, that turn 1 Colonnade is ready to go to answer the Planeswalker.
Yep, and there's really nothing that she can do about it. She has Liliana in the Veil in her hand. She has the card she drew for turn.
Yeah, checking to see if she has any Ghost Quarters or something like that would answer, but it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, she could, if she had Fulminator Mage, she could cast that here. But she couldn't cast Liliana and protect.
Right. I really liked that discard off Tony. That was a nice play. Jean's going to go back to Liliana. -2. Kill the Snapcasters. Hopes for no untapped land. Yeah, but Tony has it. Here comes the Colonnade. It attacks down the Planeswalker. Big sequence for Tony. He has equalized. Collective Brutality from Jadine. Path to Exile or Logic Knot. She'll take the path. Then she'll cast Scavenging Ooze.
Okay. If Tony can't produce a Snapcaster Mage on this turn, this can get out of control.
Well, the Ooze right now, we have a Snapcaster it can eat, and I think it stops at a 3/3, which is unfortunate against Jeskai. She'd really like to get it to a 4/4.
Yeah, not having the 4th toughness means that Tony does have more live draws, though this will turn off Snapcaster Mage as a top deck in any meaningful way while the green mana is up.
Jadine plays Raging Ravine, says go. I want to look at how Tony played this. So he could have hit back with, you see the 22-16. Tony's ahead in the race and could have kept racing with Colonnade. What he decided to do was leave back Colonnade as a potential blocker, and then when Jadine didn't attack, use Desolate Lighthouse. He's still, despite the fact that he's ahead on life, he's still taking the control role.
And it makes sense. Just his spells are just on average better. If he can just control his draws, filter through the cards he doesn't want, he should be able to execute on the control plan.
Relic of Progenitus from Tony. Jadine may eat the Snapcaster Mage before this hits the battlefield, and she will. Scavenging Ooze up to a 3/3. Another land by Tony, and he'll pass. He still has the requisite mana for Celestial Colonnade.
With all these spells in his graveyard and only 1 card left in hand, Tony's not really in the market to sacrifice and exile the Relic of Progenitus.
See if Jadine offers Raging Ravine for Colonnade. She'll activate the creature land, attack, it turns into a 4/4. She offers the trade of creature lands. We'll see if Tony accepts. Looks like the answer is yes. He's going to activate and block. Jadine says, fine.
Yeah, that was the only Colonnade.
Yep.
Theoretically, this opens the door for Scavenging Ooze to start attacking on the following turn.
Jadine says go. 1 mana. Now, with Logic Knot as one of the 2 cards in Tony's hand, Jadine knows about it, but it's likely just a hard counter here. Except Tony has to, this is interesting, he had to crack Relic of Progenitus to draw a card. Now Logic Knot's not a hard counter.
Yep. So his Logic Knot's a lot worse. He certainly, until he answers the Scavenging Ooze, Snapcaster Mage is pretty bad anyway. But he had a lot of good stuff in his graveyard. He would like to have been able to kill the Scavenging Ooze without having to crack the Relic.
A hit for 3 from Scavenging Ooze, and also on Jadine's side, another Raging Ravine. As she says go, Tony down to 18.
Looks like Tony's holdings are that Logic Knot and a Snapcaster Mage. That one's pretty poor here. Outsized by the Scavenging Ooze and just not going to be able to flash anything back. Both an empty graveyard and a Scavenging Ooze to deal with.
Yeah, there's a lot of work before that Snapcaster Mage turns into anything meaningful. Do you think he might even discard it to Desolate Lighthouse? Or
reasonable chance. Depends what the card off the top is.
I mean, it seems it's weak here. I hate having to discard Snapcaster Mage just because
it's a creature, which is the real problem with discarding it. So then the Ooze gets to be a 4/4.
Yeah, he keeps the Snapcaster Mage and discards Logic Knot.
Especially when Jadine is not likely to be casting a spell here for a minute. If you can't deal with the Scavenging Ooze, you also can't deal with the Raging Ravine.
Right, yeah, Ravine plus Ooze is the play on the table for Jadine, and it's a pretty good play. Unclear if we'll see her make it do anything different. She'll start with Thoughtseize. I like this here. Does Tony flash a 2/1 into play? Looks like he has Cryptic Command. Is he thinking about letting this resolve and just to hang on to the Cryptic?
Possibly. Then you would still have access to Cryptic with the Snapcast. Well, you wouldn't because of the Scavenging Ooze. You would stop Jadine from attacking. I don't think you can just let this resolve. I think he's thinking about what modes. This is kind of a tough spot for Cryptic Command.
So it's counter, and then counter bounce, counter draw, unclear.
Yeah. He has enough life total where you probably don't have to counter bounce just yet. I'd be inclined to counter draw.
I mean, we have Torrential Gearhulk going to be cast in response to the Thoughtseize. So it looks like he might have had Gearhulk and Cryptic. Gearhulk targeting Logic Knot. Jadine removes the Knot from the graveyard with Scavenging Ooze, and she sees Snapcaster and Cryptic Command. So this is how we see the decision. It looks like Jadine's decision is there are other cards and other Thoughtseize. She'll just take both.
And Tony kind of decides this Gearhulk should be able to have a reasonable battlefield position here.
It blocks for a while.
Yeah. Well, Jadine cast 2 Thoughtseize. That costs 4 life. She's at 13 now.
Do you want to attack back on Tony's side?
Yeah, you want to do some quick math here. So Jadine has Raging Ravine, Scavenging Ooze. The Scavenging Ooze just goes to a 4. It'd be 8 on the crack back, and then 9 on the following turn. That's 1 point shy of a 2-turn clock.
It is.
And the Gearhulk kills Jadine in 3 turns. That's just clean, 5/5/5.
So Tony technically wins that race, but it's that margin of 1. I'm not thrilled.
It's not huge.
Tarmogoyf from Jadine. Relic of Progenitus just got cracked. So
there's the Tarmogoyf.
Tarmogoyf, it's a 0/1. Desolate Lighthouse used by Tony. I used to call that one what I call it Desolate Loot House. I liked that.
Explain it to me.
That's complicated. And players are just going to trade draw steps. So now that Lighthouse really doing work. Jadine is stuck without a way to answer Gearhulk. Well, a lot of her Terminates you'd expect to not be in the deck anymore post-board. What answers would she I mean,
plenty of Liliana's in the deck, but she's gone through some of those.
Fulminator Mage from Jadine. That's pretty welcome. That Desolate Lighthouse is doing a lot of work this game.
Yeah. Pretty into getting that off the battlefield.
Yeah, and it actually helps grow the Scavenging Ooze 1 bigger.
Yep.
Tony's going to use the Lighthouse. We'll see if, I don't know if Jadine's going to let him untap it. Yeah, she'll tag that with Fulminator Mage. That is the last loot that Tony gets. Tarmogoyf up to a 2/3.
Good chance you won't see the creature point hanging out for that Tarmogoyf. The Scavenging Ooze is more likely to outsize the Torrential Gearhulk.
Yeah, and she'll do just that. Scavenging goes up to a 5/5. 1 more and it can swing past the Gearhulk. Looks like, though, Tony's picked up a Cryptic Command in the meantime.
That one's pretty good at swinging damage races.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm feeling on Tony's side is he really just has to not lose here. Eventually, I mean, as opposed to winning, eventually if he draws, say, Sphinx's Revelation, he's going to win.
Yeah.
And this Torrential Gearhulk, just as a 5/6, has done a great job on this board. Because of how Jadine has to sideboard in the matchup, she's really ill-equipped to just answer a 5/6. It's buying Tony a ton of turns.
Yeah, 5/6 is not the largest that creatures get in Modern, but it's generally larger than the creatures in the mid-range decks.
Remember, this was a mulligan to 5 for Jadine. She'll go for a Thoughtseize. Let's see what... Tony's picked up a bunch of cards since we last saw his hand. And we're not going to get to see it just yet. Counter draw from Cryptic Command. Three, 4 Tarmogoyf attacking into Torrential Gearhulk.
Yeah, I like the attack here.
Is your read that does she just want another counter for the use?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. She sees that this game is slipping away. Tony's got 4 cards in hand. He is very quickly just counters Thoughtseize with Cryptic Command. He's got nice holdings.
Tony just takes the 3. He goes to 14. Says go.
And Tony with a little bit of life to play with yet. And he sees he doesn't want the Scavenging Ooze to be a 6/6. So this is kind of interesting.
Jadine wants the block, so Tony doesn't want it. Now he'll block. Torrential Gearhulk defeats the Tarmogoyf in combat. Tarmogoyf into the graveyard. Kitchen Finks from Jadine. 5 cards in hand for Tony Norton. Finks resolves, Jadine goes to 17.
Not a ton of clean answers to Kitchen Finks in the Jeskai deck, but pretty easy to get it with 2 cards.
And here was the worry that one Sphinx's Revelation was going to show up. You see, gain 4, draw 4, end step for Tony. Now untapping with a full grip.
Things have gone from bad to worse.
Engineered Explosives on 2. Tarmogoyf was going to die anyway.
This will solve that Scavenging Ooze problem for Tony.
Yeah, he'll remove the explosives, gets rid of Scavenging Ooze. Jadine removes the Tarmogoyf in response to gain a life.
And with the fistful of cards,
it's hard for him to miss from here.
Yeah.
A Johnny Vengeant. +1 keeps Raging Ravine tapped. That's another removal spell.
After casting a Johnny, now it makes sense to hang back with the Gearhulk. I thought we might see an attack. I guess we are going to see an attack.
Here's 5. I mean, Johnny's at 4.
Yeah, Kitchen Finks,
if Jadine
not a great attacker. I suppose it won't close anything out. This is just a little more aggressive than we've seen Tony be this match.
It's a different. This play makes sense too. You're saying, hey, if Jadine wants to remove her blockers, that's fine. I mean, you're right. It's different than how he's played.
This display makes sense the same way that Snapcaster Lightning Helix did, but he declined that.
Right. Yeah. Now Johnny will keep the Finks tapped. The Torrential Gearhulk will hit Jadine down to 8. You see Colonnade as the land drop for Tony Norton. He is looking to close as he casts Serum Visions.
I suppose it's a little easier when you have 7 cards in hand.
Yeah. There's not as much to be worried about. Jace, Architect of Thought. Goes up to 5. Jadine, one more draw. Finks tapped, no blockers, bunch of Planeswalkers. This is going to be Jeskai's game. I'm going to make our last play here of Scavenging Ooze.
Only 2 green sources otherwise. There's a Wooded Foothills. It'll find another.
And she'll fire up Raging Ravine. All right.
Any burn spell here wins the game for Tony. Path to Exile, pretty good as well.
Electrolyze taking down Scavenging Ooze. And he shows that he has lethal here. So 2-0. It's going to be Tony Norton winning on table 2. He defeats Jadine Klomparens, ends the 7-match win streak. But we saw yesterday Jadine